Okay, so we'll start lying down. So make your way onto your back and come to, ideally come to a position where you've got soles of the feet on the mat. So knees are bent, soles of the feet on the mat. And if it feels okay, have the knees resting together and creep the feet out a little wider. So it really feels like the knees are leaning against each other. If that doesn't feel comfortable, you could have feet and knees hip width apart or any other variation. And if generally that doesn't feel right for you, then just be in a comfortable position on your back. Take your time to settle. Allow the body to come to a sense of relative stillness. And then bring your focus to your breath. Observing the breath as it comes in, as it goes out. So just allowing the breath to be in its natural rhythm. Observing the natural balance between the inhale and the exhale. Perhaps starting to notice the pauses, however short, micro pauses they might feel like, the pauses between each inhale and exhale, the pause between exhale and inhale. Just noticing those as they naturally occur. Whenever you notice that the mind has been distracted away from observing the breath in this way, so when you suddenly realize that you're no longer observing the breath, but are occupied by other thoughts or noticing sensations or things going on around you, use that noticing to help you guide the mind's attention back to the breath. If you want to set an intention for your practice today, then take a moment to do that now. See what comes up for you. It might take the form of an affirmation. I am balanced. I am grounded. But just see what comes up for you and take a moment to set that intention now if you want to. Now, if you're not already, come to a position where knees are bent, soles of the feet are on the mat, about hip width apart. So knees and feet are both about hip width apart. Let's have the arms resting alongside the body in whatever way feels comfortable. A note before we start, we'll be working with some twists here. So even if you don't usually tend to use support for the kinds of twists that we take from the back, so like when we draw the knees over, for example, to one side, even if you don't usually use support, if you have something handy that you can grab, maybe just do that now. So that could be, cushions, blankets. And if you don't have anything, no worries, but you might just want to have those to hand sort of within reach to your right hand side at the moment. So lying on your back, knees bent, soles of the feet on the mat. Draw navel in towards the spine, so there's a feeling of the lower back drawing down into or towards the mat a little more. Maybe you might also have a feeling or awareness of the tailbone lengthening away from you a little here. Keeping the arms alongside the body, use your next inhale to pick your feet up off the mat. And then as you exhale, let the knees draw in towards the chest. So arms are still alongside the body. As you inhale, see if you can have a sense of inhaling into the chest, into the front of the heart space. As you exhale, an awareness of the weightiness of the legs as they draw in towards you, and a feeling of that weightiness drawing down to the front body releasing down to the back body, a feeling of the back body releasing into the mat. Bring your hands onto your knees now, or if it feels more comfortable, you could have hands on the backs of the thighs, whichever feels most comfortable for you. And then using a gentle presence and pressure of the hands to see if you might explore the knees drawing towards the chest a little more. So you're not forcing anything to happen. You're using each exhale to see if there's any scope, maybe for the knees to draw towards the chest a little more. As you do that on each exhale, perhaps feeling a bit more sense of weightiness and release down through to the lower back. As you inhale, still a feeling of inhaling into the space across the chest. You can also use the press of the hands to help with a sense of the shoulders softening and releasing down into the mat. If it feels comfortable to, if there is a gap between the knees at the moment, which there may very well be, we entered this pose with knees hip width apart. So if there's scope to, see how it feels to bring the knees together or closer towards each other. So perhaps even the knees are touching. If that doesn't feel comfortable, you can keep some space between the knees. So stay in this position of the knees drawing in towards the chest, but release the hands now. Bring the arms to rest on the ground at shoulder height. So they can be outstretched or they can be bent at the elbows. So there's still a feeling of the shoulders softening and releasing down into the ground. So this is where having some support in place might be helpful. And I'd invite you to just explore this. Even if you don't usually have support in place, you can always get rid of it after a breath or two if it's not right for you. But it can be really interesting and informative to just notice how the body feels with support as compared to without support. It might just give you valuable information about how you take the pose generally, even if it's without support. So if you have some height available, place that to the right hand side now. Take an inhale, and then as you exhale, draw the knees over to the right. See if you can really try and keep the knees in line with each other as you do this. So if knees are touching, then you've got a bit more point of reference here. So there's a feeling as the left hip draws over to the right, that the left knee needs to extend over to the right a little more than the right knee does. So eventually the left hip comes to stack above the right hip as the knees come into contact with the ground or with the support if you have it available. As you next exhale, see if the left shoulder can soften and release down towards the ground or into the ground a little more. As you inhale, see if you can have a feeling of the left knee extending away from the left hip a little more. So there's a feeling overall of the left thigh lengthening a bit more. If there is a gap between the knees, which can be a very common thing as you come over to the side, if there is a gap between the knees, then if you've got some support available, like a blanket or a cushion, place that between the knees so that the left knee is resting on something. The hip isn't needing to hold it in place. So we often take this twist in these sessions, perhaps towards the end of a session, as a releasing kind of a pose, and it's still offering you those benefits here. But what I'm encouraging you to do here is to be a little more active with this twist. So that action of the left knee extending a little further away from the left hip, so that overall the knees are a little more in line with each other. So as always, it's not that you're trying to get the body to a certain position, but more that you want to energetically feel that sense of the left thigh, particularly the outer left thigh, lengthening a little more. So focus on that on the inhale. And then on the exhale, focus on the shoulders softening and releasing down, and also a feeling of the hips releasing, letting go of holding. So maybe it might feel helpful to have a feeling of the left hip softening and releasing down to the right hip as the right hip releases into the ground. Last few breaths here. The use of support under the knees can be helpful for allowing the knees to get to somewhere where they can rest if the floor feels a long way away from the knees when you turn to the side. It can also be really helpful in allowing the opposite shoulder, so in this case the left shoulder, to release down into the ground more. So again, if the opposite shoulder, left shoulder in this case, feels a long way away from the ground, then that can be another reason to explore taking support underneath the knees. Okay, so in a moment we're going to draw back to center, just doing that a little more consciously than we might do usually. So if you've got the arms extended out long, then if it feels okay, kind of make fists with the hands and then press the outer side of each fist into the ground. So your hands are a bit more kind of plugged into the ground. If you're bent at the elbows, then take that same action with the elbows of kind of pressing the elbows into the ground a little more. So you're using that to support, ready for when we draw back to center. So press either elbows or fists into the ground, particularly on the left side, but don't neglect the right side. And on your next inhale, draw the knees back to center. You can take hands onto the knees or behind the thighs now, hug them in. And if it feels good, you could take some rocks from side to side, if that feels good for a feeling of massaging out the lower back across the mat, or you can stay in stillness, whichever feels right for you. You're rocking from side to side, come back to stillness now. A few more breaths here, hands still on the knees or the thighs. Use each exhale to nurture a sense of the front body releasing down into the back body, particularly the lower back, releasing into the mat. Okay, move any support that you're working with over to the other side. Keep the knees drawing in towards you and release the arms when you're ready, so they're resting on the ground at shoulder height, either outstretched or bent at the elbows. And when you're ready, use an exhale to draw the knees over to the left. So as you do that, be really conscious, particularly of the action of the right hip drawing up and over, and of the right thigh and knee. So a feeling already of the right knee needing to lengthen away from the hip a bit more. It's needing to do more work than the left knee, the left thigh. So bring the knees to rest either on the ground or on your support. Try and maintain any sort of energetic sense of lengthening in the top thigh, so the right thigh, right knee that you've developed as you've moved over. On your exhale, focus on the right shoulder, feeling of the right shoulder softening, releasing down into the ground. So as you inhale, each inhale now focus on that feeling of lengthening of the right knee, lengthening away from the right hip. So you kind of got, well, it depends exactly how your knees have come over, but it might feel like a bit of a kind of diagonal line almost that you've got, but a straight line from the right hip to the right knee, and you're wanting to lengthen that. Remind you, if you've got a gap between the knees, which may very well be the case, it tends to be very common for a lot of us, then placing some support between the knees can be helpful here. So a feeling overall, without striving and kind of getting hung up on the body being in a certain position, but overall a feeling of trying to bring the knees into greater alignment. So that they are, as you turn over to the right, naturally it will tend to be that the bottom knee is kind of a little further forward, if you like, than the top knee. So you're working to try and bring them into greater alignment. You're using the exhale to find a softening in this. So although there is action and effort and lengthening going on in the inhale, on the exhale, see if as well as the shoulders softening, you can have a feeling of the hips softening, releasing down. So again, this is where support, good support under the knees can be helpful here. Okay, so you're going to prepare to draw back to center. So do that by making those either fists with the hands if you've got the arms outstretched, so it's the outer edge of the fist that then, so the little finger side of the fist that then presses into the ground, or if you're bent at the elbows, you can press the elbows into the ground. So use that press now on an inhale to draw the knees back to center. And then hug the knees in one more time. Take a few breaths there. They draw navel towards spine. Release the hands, bring the arms back alongside the body, and then use an exhale to draw the soles of the feet back down to the mat. Take your time now to make your way up to a seated position. So you might roll to one side and push yourself up, or you could take a rock and roll along the spine if that's part of your practice. And that feels good right now. And ideally, come to sitting on your heels. So reminder, when you're sitting on heels, you can take as much height as feels helpful between bum and heel. So, you could build up lots of height here to help relieve pressure on feet, on knees. We're not going to be here for too long, but obviously you want to feel comfortable. So if sitting on heels isn't an option for you, or if at any point it gets too much, then if you have a chair available, then come to sitting on a chair. So we're we're basically seeking, ideally seeking a closed hipped seated position. So next best option is to sitting on heels would be to sit on a chair, knees close together, feet firmly planted. So better to do that if you can, rather than come to an open hipped position like Sukhasana on the mat. But no problem at all if that's the option that's available to you. If you don't have a chair, sitting on heels isn't an option, by all means come to Sukhasana or another comfortable seated position. Once you're settled in your seated position, bring your focus back to your breath. Imagine that you're inhaling up from the base of the spine, all the way up the spine into the chest. As you exhale, a feeling of the shoulders softening down, and imagine the breath traveling down the body through to the sit bones. So the sit bones are releasing down into the surface beneath them. A few more breaths in this way. And this may have happened naturally, that the breath has lengthened a little as you've started to bring this focus to the breath, but if not, you might want to explore that, just lengthening the inhale and the exhale a little, but keep the breath feeling easeful. On your next inhale, sweep the right arm out to the side and up. So you're reaching up with the right fingertip. Bring the left hand, if you're on the mat, you can bring the fingertips or the hand to rest on the mat alongside the left hip, or press it against the side of the chair if you're in a chair. So active through the right fingertips. Bring your focus to the right side body. So as you inhale, there's a feeling of lengthening of the right side body from the top of the right hip point all the way up the side body to the armpit, the shoulder, up the arm through to the fingertips. As you exhale, a feeling of the shoulders softening down away from the ears, and feel that softening travel all the way down through to the sit bones. So keep following the breath in this way. So at the bottom of each exhale, there's a feeling of the sit bones releasing, spreading, rooting down into the surface beneath them. And perhaps even a subtle awareness of the hips drawing down as that happens. So it's from that place of rootedness through the sit bones, the hips, that you can then feel free to really explore that lengthening of the side body up and out of the bowl of the pelvis. You can stay here following the breath in this way, or if it feels okay, you could explore drawing the right hand over towards the left a little more. Keep the focus on the right side body. So you're drawing it over to the left in order to find more length in the right side body. Use the press of the left hand against the mat or the chair to help keep the right sit bone rooted as you do that. So continue to use the exhales to cultivate that feeling of the sit bones, the hips releasing and rooting down. So you're still working from that place of rootedness. Last few breaths here. You can also use the press of the left hand to see if the left shoulder might draw back and down a bit more. So on the exhale, as you're starting with that feeling of the tops of the shoulders softening down, you might also explore feeling like the shoulders are drawing back as they come down a bit more. Great. Inhale back to center if you've drawn over towards the left. Turn the palm to face outwards. Exhale, sweep the arm out to the side and down. Feel free to have a roll of the shoulders. And also, if you're sitting on heels and want to release the legs for a moment, have a little bit of a shake out or rotate the ankles, anything else that feels good to ease out, feel free to do that. And then you can either come back to your whatever seated position you're in, or change it. So it might be if you've been sitting on heels, you want to come to sitting on a chair now, or vice versa. Take a moment to settle and come back to the breath. So following the breath in the same way as before, inhaling up the spine into the chest. Exhaling, shoulders softening down, feel the softening come all the way down through to the sit bones. Keep following the breath in this way. On your next inhale, sweep the left arm out to the side and up, reach up with the left fingertips. Right hand comes to rest on the mat or against the chair. Focus is on the left side body. So each inhale, that feeling of lengthening all the way from the hip point up to the fingertips. If you can have the left palm facing towards the right, if that feels okay for the shoulder, then do that. On your exhales, the softening starts with the shoulders, softening down away from the ears. And again, if you can have even a subtle sense of them drawing back as they soften down, then great. And then feel that softening come all the way down through to the sit bones. So the sit bones are spreading, releasing down, and maybe there's also an awareness as they do that of the hips releasing down. Either stay here or explore drawing the left hand over towards the right. It might be a tiny movement. I'd recommend working with tiny movements. That's the beauty of working with the breath. You can really work with it on each breath. So rather than being in a hurry to kind of get as far over to the right as might, feel okay and helpful, you can kind of do it in increments with the breath. So on each exhale, there's a feeling of releasing over towards the right. On the inhale, you can then see what greater length you can find. Can you extend that through the fingertips a bit more? Then maybe on the exhale, perhaps you release over to the right a bit more. Stay aware of the left sit bone. You can use the press of the right hand to help keep that left sit bone rooted. And if you're losing the left sit bone, draw back a little, kind of dial it back a bit and continue from there. Last few breaths. Face soft, jaw soft. Great. If you've drawn over to the right, inhale back to center. Turn the palm to face outwards. Exhale, sweep the arm out to the side and down. And again, feel free to have a roll of the shoulders. If you rolled them one way last time, roll them the other way this time. Great. Okay, so come to all fours now. We're going to take some cat-cow stretches to mobilize the spine. If it feels better for you to take those movements from seated, feel free to be seated, either sitting on heels or sitting on a chair if you can. Otherwise, you're coming to all fours. And in your own time, ease into your cat-cow, so you don't need to be copying, sort of matching the pace of my movement or my guidance. Just ease into your cat-cows in your own time and focus on matching each movement to the breath. So again, you might be exploring lengthening the inhale and the exhale here, if that feels good. So on each inhale, there's a focus on the shoulders drawing back to create space for the chest to draw forward, tailbone tipping up. On each exhale, the press of the hands into the mat helps you to then draw the middle of the spine up towards the ceiling as the head releases down, as the tailbone lengthens down. So really explore that press of the hands into the mat, all the way through to the bottom of your exhale. So a feeling of the hands, not just pressing, it's not just muscular effort, but a feeling of them releasing down into the mat. So see if you can really cultivate that, particularly as you get towards the bottom of your exhale. It's almost like you're breathing down into the palms of the hands. Lovely. Great. An awareness here of, again, the balance, the natural balance between inhale and exhale. The interplay between the two, and kind of maybe feeling into this movement as a kind of an expression, a physical expression of that interplay. So as we move the spine in one direction and then the other, the interplay between those two movements. Great. Okay, come back to center. We're going to, from here, just stay in our all fours. Just really check that shoulders are above wrists as far as you can manage that. Fingers are spread wide. So with shoulders above the wrists, there's more weightiness coming down through the hands. So there's that weightiness coming down through the hands and that feeling of actively pressing the hands into the mat. So as you do that now, maybe there's even, it almost feels like the arms are lengthening a little as you press the hands into the mat. So you're keeping the back flat now. It's not like that press is causing the spine to curl into a cat position. Great. Keep that action going on in the left hand and also have an awareness of the tops of the feet pressing and releasing down into the mat. So it might not feel quite as emphatic as through the hands, but still an awareness there of their connection with the mat. So keep pressing down through the left hand now, so you become lighter on the right hand. And then on your next inhale, sweep the right arm out to the side. Maybe it draws up, maybe fingertips draw up a little more. So you're using the press of the left hand. It's like you've got the rebound energy from the press of that left hand to raise the right arm. It might be out at shoulder height, might be higher, doesn't matter. But overall, there's a feeling of expansion from that left hand along the left arm across the chest to the right shoulder, right arm raised. If it doesn't feel great on the shoulder, having the arm raised, you could bring hands to the hip here. Super. Okay, on your next exhale, draw the right arm down, start bending into the left elbow, draw the right arm across the chest as you then turn round towards the left and bring the right shoulder, right side of the head down to rest on the mat. Support can be helpful here if it feels like the mat is a long way away, or perhaps you bring the head down but you're aware that the shoulder isn't in contact with the mat. If you can, get some support in place so that both head and shoulder are in contact with something here. The hips are still above the knees, right shoulder, right side of the head are resting against the mat, and both arms and hands are passive now. There's no effort in the arms or the hands. They're just resting on the ground. So on each exhale, see if you can have a feeling of the right shoulder softening and releasing down into the ground a little more. Maybe lengthening the exhale for the last few breaths here. Great. Okay, get active through the left hand now. So press the left hand into the mat again and use that press now as you inhale to draw yourself back up. Keep the right arm out to the side and then exhale the right hand down. Just take a few cat-cows once you're there as a little bit of a reset. Check that hips are above knees as well. So working online can be quite handy here because it might be that you can kind of glance at your screen and see from that as well, sort of how aligned you are. So come back to stillness now. Actively press the hands into the mat, and as you do that, also an awareness of the tops of the feet, pressing and releasing down into the mat. And then continue the action with the right hand. Keep pressing the right hand into the mat, but lighter on the left hand now. Then when you're ready, use an inhale to sweep the left arm out to the side. Maybe the left arm draws up. If that doesn't feel great for the shoulder, at any point you could bring the left hand onto the hip. And that might be quite helpful, or at least interesting to explore anyway. Might allow you to draw the left shoulder back and down a bit more to bring more expansion across the chest. So it's the feeling of that revolved movement of the chest revolving round towards the left, coming from that press of the right hand. So it's the kind of originating action. Great. Brilliant. On your next exhale, draw the left arm down, bend into the right elbow, bring the left arm across the chest, and then draw the left shoulder, left side of the head down to the mat. And once you're there, you can let both hands, both arms relax, just rest on the mat. Again, if the left shoulder isn't in contact with the mat, see if you can get some support underneath. Or if you can't do that right now in the practice, then perhaps when you come back to this another time, you could have some support available, or maybe someone around to help you sort of and tuck some support under the shoulder. It can be a tricky one to get the support in place yourself, I know. So on each exhale, a feeling of the left shoulder softening and releasing down into the mat. Maybe lengthening the exhale a little more if you haven't already. Great, get active through the right hand again now. So actively press the right hand into the mat and use that press as you inhale to draw yourself back up. Sweep the left arm out to the side and then exhale the left hand down. Great. Okay, so we're going to make our way up to standing. If you want to come up via a downward dog and a forward fold, feel free to do that. Equally, feel free to make your way straight up to standing. We will then meet at the top of the mat in mountain pose. So take your time to get there. So even if you're not taking a downward dog, forward fold, take your time to make your way up and then settle into your mountain pose. So no rush. If you come straight to mountain pose, then you're really focusing on consciously, fully, actively coming into your mountain pose. And once you've done that, then you're bringing your attention to your breath. Feet are actively pressing down into the mat. Tailbone is lengthening down towards the mat. Maybe you notice the glutes switch on a bit more, perhaps the quads as well. Navel drawing in towards spine, shoulders drawing back and down. As you inhale, imagine you're inhaling from the base of the spine all the way up the spine to the chest. As you exhale, tops of the shoulders softening down, and imagine that breath traveling all the way down the body through to the soles of the feet now. Follow the breath in this way for a few more rounds. Bring palms of the hands together in front of the heart, either closing your eyes or softening your gaze. If you set an intention at the start of your practice, take a moment to recall that now. On your next inhale, either sweep your arms up or bring hands to the hips. As you exhale, draw the chest forwards and down, coming into a forward fold. Inhale to a halfway lift, shoulders drawing back, chest drawing forward. Exhale to forward fold. Plant the hands in front of, slightly wider than the feet, and use an inhale to bring the weight forwards into the hands a bit more. See if you can find that. So we'll pause here for a moment. See if you can find that press of the hands into the mat, like we were doing in all fours. It might not feel like quite such a solid connection maybe, but find what you can here.
If you've got a height to place under the hands, you could use that, or be on fingertips if hands to the mat isn't an option. But remember, you can bend the knees as much as you need to, as long as the feet stay firmly rooted. So you want the heels to still be really rooted here. Take one more inhale, press the hands into the mat, maybe the hips lift a little more as you do that. And then as you next exhale, draw the right foot back, draw the back knee down. So back toes are tucked under, back knee comes down. And then if you're not already on height under the hands, then you can come up onto fingertips or place some height under the hands now. So you're coming to your low lunge. Check that the front foot is firmly rooted. So depending on what you needed to do to make that contact between the hands and the mat as you came forwards and prepared to step back, you might find that you need to wriggle the foot forwards a little so that you're still really firmly rooted through the heel as well as the ball of the front foot. Use the press of the hands or the fingertips now to see if you can have a feeling of the shoulders drawing back and down, even if it feels like there's no physical action. And what you're really trying to find here is more space for a feeling of the chest drawing forwards and up. So it's as if the chest is trying to draw further away from the top of the pubic bone, so that overall there's a feeling of lengthening in the front body from pubic bone up to collarbone. On your exhale, see if you can feel like the tops of the shoulders are still softening down, and imagine that softening traveling all the way down through to the pelvis. So there's an awareness of the pelvis releasing down towards the mat. You're not making it do anything extra, anything else, but just an awareness of that as a center of gravity here. Great. Bring palms of the hands back to the mat if you've come up onto fingertips. Tuck the back toes under. Press the hands into the mat in the same way as before, as if you're pushing the ground away from you. And on your next inhale, raise the back knee up. As you exhale, draw the front foot back. So that might be a bit of a shuffle, it might be a slide back, it might be a step back. Shoulders are above wrist, you're in plank pose for a moment, and then pressing into the hands, inhale, draw the hips up and back to come to your downward dog. Stay here in that downward dog for a few breaths. If downward dog doesn't feel right for you, you could draw knees to the mat, bum to heels, forehead to the mat, and be in an extended child's pose. Either way, see if you can come back to that feeling of length in the side body. So think about when we were extending fingertips up towards the ceiling and finding that length from the top of the hip point all the way up to the fingertips. See if you can find that same sense of length now. So now, with being differently orientated, it might feel helpful to imagine that you're inhaling from the outer edge of the wrist to the outer edge of the hip on each side. And this time, it's the hips that are lengthening up rather than the fingertips. And it's the hands rather than the sit bones that are releasing down. So you kind of got opposite directional actions going on through hands and hips. Great. We'll prepare to step through with the right foot. So either be in downward dog or all fours for that, whichever you know is right for you for a step through. Take an inhale to prepare. And then as you exhale, draw the right foot forward. If you've come from downward dog, draw the back knee down. Come up onto fingertips or height underneath the hands. And make adjustments to your low lunge on the other side. So remember the front foot feeling firmly rooted. Back groin wants to feel open but not overstretched. And then use the press of the hands to find that feeling of shoulders drawing back so the chest can draw forwards and lift. So you're finding length in the front body. As you exhale, tops of the shoulders soften down and feel that softening come through to the pelvis as the pelvis releases towards the mat. A few breaths here. Great. Bring palms of the hands to the mat. Tuck the back toes under. Inhale the back knee up. Exhale, step the back foot forward, as many steps as you need to come to your forward fold. Take a few breaths in your forward fold. Feel free to take any variations on your forward fold. That might involve taking hold of opposite elbows with your hands if that feels helpful for making the shoulders a bit weightier. Or you might have the arms released down. Take hold of the big toes if that's part of your practice. But only if that feels helpful in allowing you to cultivate that feeling of softening and release through the upper body. And also in that, there's a feeling of softening and lengthening in the side body. So you could imagine on each exhale that you're exhaling from the hip down the side body to the shoulders as the side body softens and lengthens. On your next inhale, come to a halfway lift. Exhale to forward fold. Inhale, draw the chest forward all the way up. Sweep the arms up or bring hands to the hips. Exhale, bring palms of the hands together in front of the heart. Release the arms alongside the body. Be in your mountain pose. So active in your mountain pose, either closing your eyes or softening your gaze. Observe the breath, allow the breath to settle. Notice how the body feels. Maybe observe anything coming up in the mind without attaching to it or judging it. Just observing. Bring your focus to your feet a little more. See if you can find a sense of actively pressing the feet into the mat. So hopefully there's an element of that going on already in your active mountain pose, but see if you can really bring your focus there now. So actively pressing the feet into the mat. Bring your hands onto your hips. Find a point to gaze at a few feet in front of you. And that can be helpful for balance. Keep that feeling of the feet actively pressing into the mat. Tailbone still lengthening down, so everything else still in mountain pose. And now bring your focus to your left foot. Keep actively pressing down through the left foot. Bring a bend to the left knee so you feel weightier through the left foot as well, but still stay active through the foot. Don't just let the weightiness be the contact that's going on there now. So you're really actively pressing down and weighty through the left foot, so you automatically become lighter on the right foot. Bring a bit more of a bend to the left knee if that feels okay. So right knee is probably bending a little to allow that to happen, that's fine. On your next inhale, raise the right heel up. And then as you exhale, either step or slide the right foot back to where you think it would need to be for warrior one. We're not coming into warrior one, but just step back. So as you do that, you'll probably bend into the front knee more and then press down through the ball of the back foot. So the back toes are still pointing forward towards the top of the mat in the same direction as the front foot. Hands are still on the hips. Actively press down through the front foot and actively press into the ball of the back foot so that then the heel, so then you can allow the heel to extend back. If the heel touches the mat, then take the foot further back. So you don't want the heel touching the mat. We're in a high lunge here now. But you're extending through the heel so that you're then really active and strong through the back leg. You're also actively pressing down through the front foot, so you're strong and stable through that front foot. And it's fine here for the knee to go beyond the ankle. We're not in a warrior pose. You can keep hands on the hips or inhale, raise the arms up. Last few breaths here if you can. So the more you can get active through that back leg to support you, the better. Less pressure, less work on the front thigh in particular then. Great. Okay. On your next exhale, draw the arms down if you've raised them up. Bring hands back onto the hips. Now tap the back foot forwards a little so that it's like you're in a really short high lunge now. It's not really much of a high lunge. You're still on the ball of the back foot, so you're still pointing towards the top edge of the mat. As you inhale, raise the arms up. Really press down through the ball of the back foot, but this time there's a feeling rather than the heel extending back so much, it's more that through that press into the ball of the back foot, you feel like the rebound energy from that is helping you to draw the fingertips up towards the ceiling more. So there's a feeling of lengthening all the way from the ball of the back foot all the way up to the fingertips. So up the leg, up the side body, through to the fingertips. Press into the front foot more, bend into the front knee more, and see if you can lengthen forwards a bit more. Keep the arms alongside the head, alongside the ears. Keep pressing into the ball of the back foot. Keep that feeling of a strong, straight line of energy from the back foot all the way up to the fingertips. And as you press into the front foot, bend into the front knee more, maybe you come up onto the very tiptoe of the back foot. You're extending forwards with the fingertips. And then maybe you press into the front foot more and straighten up through the front leg. So as you do that, the back leg happens to lift up off the mat. But it's as a kind of a byproduct of lengthening that front leg, of stepping into and lengthening that front leg. Lovely. So the aim here is to keep that feeling of a straight line of energy from the back foot to the fingertips. And from there you might explore, so feel free to, you might come out, we're working with balance, so you might come out and then come back in. You might lengthen forwards more. So you might be anywhere from, you might keep the tiptoes on the mat, no problem at all. This is a great place to work. We're working with variations of Warrior 3 here. So you might work here, finding that energetic feeling of lengthening from back foot to fingertips. If you've got the foot raising, you might start to lengthen forwards a little more, and you might end up anywhere up to kind of being sort of horizontal with the arms and the legs. But don't make that the aim, and certainly don't start to kind of think about how high up you can get your leg or how far forward you can get your arms if you leave the other one behind. You don't want to end up feeling like you're hinging at the hips. If you've got the back leg raised, see if the hip of the back leg can draw down and in towards the midline of the body. Great. And be really active through that back foot if you've got the leg raised. So you could have a play around with how it feels to push through the ball of the foot as if you're pressing the sole of the foot against the surface behind you. And also see how it feels to point the back foot like a ballet dancer and see what feels most helpful for you in keeping that back leg really active. That's great, Jill. Focus on pressing down through that front foot and lengthening through the front leg. That's where the kind of power comes from now. Yeah, that's great, Angela. And then I think what you're working on is that strength in the back leg and trying to keep drawing that back hip in towards the midline of the body. Super. Okay, so to come out, I mean, this might be for reference if you're already out, but to come out, bend into the front knee, extend back through the back leg until the foot reaches the mat if it's not there already, and then you can come back into your short high lunge, bring hands back to the hips, and then exhale, step the back foot forward. Be in your mountain pose for a moment, observe the breath. Bring hands onto the hips. Actively press down through the right foot. Bend into the right knee, bring some weightiness into the right knee. Find a point to gaze at if that feels helpful. Inhale, raise the left heel up, so you're on the ball of the left foot. And whenever you're ready, use an exhale to step the left foot back for your high lunge. So here you're pressing into the ball of the foot and then extending the heel of the back foot and extending the back heel back. So you're really strong through that back leg. So if by extending the back heel back, the heel comes into contact with the mat, take the foot a little bit further back. You can bend, you can really press into the front foot, bend into the front knee a little more, and that can help with that extension. Yeah, lovely. Either stay with hands on hips or inhale, raise the arms up, whichever feels good for you. So it's a feeling of, just as in low lunge, of the chest drawing up further away from the pelvis here. Great. Last few breaths here. Okay, if you've got the arms raised, use an exhale to draw the arms down, bring hands onto the hips, and then tap the back foot forwards a little. So by coming to warrior three from here, there's all kinds of ways you can approach warrior three, but by coming to it from this way, the idea is that you've already kind of got that feeling of a strong line of energy from the foot all the way up the back leg. And now what you're doing is really extending that up to the armpits. So you're getting the arms involved in that expression of extension all the way from the back foot. So now what you're doing is pressing into the ball of the foot, and it's like that rebound energy is helping you draw the fingertips up. So if anything, the heel is kind of drawing further up off the mat. And you're also becoming more aware of the role of the front foot and the front leg here. That's the key here, really. So once you've found that feeling of a strong, straight line of energy from back foot up to the fingertips, bring your focus more to the front foot, press into the front foot, see if you can start to press into the front foot and straighten up through that front leg. You've still got that strong line of energy. So that's your first priority. And once you've got that standing leg, then you can start to maybe extend forwards with the arms a bit more. Stay active with the back leg. So really stay active with the back leg, either by pushing out through the ball of the foot, even if if the foot is raised, you either push through the ball of the foot, or you could point the toes, see what feels most helpful for you, but find a way to really stay active through that back leg. And again, if you've got the back leg raised, then the chances are the hip will open out to the side, rotate out to the side a little as the leg raises. So see if you can draw it back down and in towards the midline of the body. And that will also help you stay much more stable in that back leg. So again, there is no aim or requirement here for the back foot to come off the mat. As I said, this can be a great place to work on warrior three. And it might be that you just take a moment, perhaps you press down through the front foot straight into the front leg, and maybe for a moment the foot comes off the mat and then you come back down. You could take some repetitions like this, for example. Yeah, that's great, Jill. Yeah, strong through that back leg. I can only see your back leg, but it looks good. Lovely. So Angela, really pressing into that front foot, straightening through the front leg. Lovely. and then active through the back leg. Yeah, that's great, Steve. So focusing on that back hip, drawing down and in towards the midline. Okay, and then to come out, you're bending back into the front leg and a feeling of extending the back leg back until it makes contact with the mat if it's not already. And then you can bring hands to the hips. And when you're ready, step the back foot forwards. Just take a moment once you've done that to once more be in your mountain pose. Allow the breath to settle. Allow the mind to settle. So whenever we work with balance, any kind of balance pose, then as I've said many times before, it can often be the case that the ego mind can get really involved, can kind of enjoy that sense of challenge. So it's a sort of it can easily be a triggering of the sympathetic nervous system. So just allowing not just the breath, but the mind to settle. And then making your way down onto your mat. If you want to take a flow to get there, feel free to, or come straight down to your mat. Grab whatever you need for your Shavasana. Any extra layers or anything to cover your eyes. And just a suggestion here, we've done quite a lot of closed hip work, and time is against us, so we don't have time to like really consciously do some hip opening. But a couple of options to suggest for Shavasana would be either to take your Shavasana in Baddha Konasana if that feels super comfortable for you. So particularly if you're watching this on recorded, you might be able to hip pause, get plenty of support to place under the thighs, for example, so that it's a really passive and supported Baddha Konasana. So that's with knees out to the side and soles of the feet pressing gently together. If that's not a position where you feel like you can really let go of effort in the body, which is the most important aspect of Shavasana, another thing that you could try is to have the legs out long, but have some height underneath the knees. So it doesn't have to be as high as this bolster. It could be rolled up blanket or pillows, something like that. But just by placing something at the backs of the knees, that allows the hips to just open a little here, but you're still completely passive and fully supported. So a couple of suggestions for you. If those don't feel right, no problem. Take what does feel right for you for your Shavasana today. And once you're settled in your Shavasana, bring your attention to your breath. Allowing the breath to be in its natural rhythm. And just as you did at the start of the session, observing the breath as it comes in, as it goes out. Observing the natural balance and interplay between each inhale and exhale. And perhaps also noticing the pauses, however tiny they might be, the pause between each inhale and exhale, pause between each exhale and inhale. Just being with the breath now and knowing that this space is held for you while you do that. Starting to bring some deeper breaths into your body. Slowly bringing some movement back to your body, maybe wiggling fingers and toes, perhaps rotating wrists and ankles. Taking any movements now, any stretches, sighs, yawns, anything that feels good as you bring your full awareness back to your body. Taking your time to make your way back up to a comfortable seated position. Having your eyes closed or your gaze soft as you do that. If you set an intention for your practice today, take a moment to recall that now. Bringing palms of the hands together in front of the heart. Take a moment to be grateful to yourself for making the time for this practice today. And a moment for us to be grateful that we have this practice of yoga available to us and that we have this means of connection available so we can gather and practice together in this way. If you want to, you could take a moment to think of anything else that you're grateful for right now. Bowing your head towards your fingertips. Namaste. Releasing your hands, raising your head whenever you're ready. Thank you guys, lovely to practice with you.